സൂര്യൻ അസ്തമിക്കാത്ത രാജ്യമായ ഇംഗ്ലണ്ട് 21-ാം നൂറ്റാണ്ടിൽ എത്തി നിൽക്കുമ്പോൾ ഈ രാജ്യത്തിന്റെ ആത്മീക നിലവാരം എങ്ങനെയായിരുന്നു എന്നും ഇപ്പോൾ എങ്ങനെയായിരിക്കുന്നു എന്നും വിലയിരുത്തുക മാത്രമാണ് ഈ വീഡിയോ കൊണ്ട് ഞങ്ങൾ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്. ഈ വീഡിയോ കണ്ട ശേഷം ഈ രാജ്യത്തിന്റെ ആത്മീക പുരോഗതിക്ക് വേണ്ടി നമുക്കോ നമ്മുടെ തലമുറയ്ക്കോ എന്തെങ്കിലും ചെയ്യുവാനുണ്ടോ എന്നും ഒരു സ്വയം പരിശോധനയ്ക്ക് തയ്യാറാകുവാൻ നമുക്ക് ശ്രമിക്കാം. IPC UK ആൻഡ് അയർലൻഡ് റീജിയന് വേണ്ടി ക്രൈസ്റ്റ് ഇൻ 21st സെഞ്ച്വറി ബ്രിട്ടൻ എന്ന പേരിൽ ഈ ഫ്യൂഷൻ ഞങ്ങൾ സമർപ്പിക്കുന്നു.
The first evidence of Christianity in England is seen from late 2nd century. At that time, Romans persecuted Christians across England. In AD 313, the Emperor Constantine granted Christians freedom of worship. In the 5th and 6th centuries, pagan people invaded England. With all invasions and persecutions, Christianity still continued to thrive. In the 5th and 6th centuries, Christianity spread widely across Ireland, and Scotland was a fully Christian state by then. In the end of the 7th century, all of England were Christians with very mighty pagan worshippers. By 10th century, the growth resulted in a religious revival, giving birth to new churches across Britain. One of the great Christians of the early 16th century was William Tyndale. In 1525, Tyndale translated the New Testament and a part of Old Testament into English. Tyndale was then burned to death. The first Baptist church in England began meeting in 1612, and later many independent churches were formed. Religious enthusiasm began to revive in England during the 18th and 19th centuries. It was in the early 20th century that the Pentecostal churches were formed. People began to experience the gifts of the Holy Spirit and started praying in tongues, resulting in a great revival. There are many inspirational and famous Christian missionaries throughout the history. William Carey. William Carey is known as the father of modern missions. Being self-motivated, he learned several Indian languages. He then became a Sanskrit professor, skilled linguist, writer, and translated Bible in many languages, including Bengali, Tamil, and many other languages. He was instrumental in influencing many other missionaries to the foreign field, particularly to India. John Wesley. John Wesley, born in 17th century, was the founder of Methodist Church, along with his brother Charles Wesley, Robert Kirkham, and William Morgan. He saved thousands of people and made them faithful Christians. Today, there are 300,000 Methodists in Britain and an estimation of around 70 million worldwide. George Muller. George Muller was a great prayer warrior who preached heavily about the need for missionaries around the world. He was instrumental in promoting the idea of faith missions. He supported more than 189 missionaries and circulated over 275,000 Bibles in different languages. At the age of 70, he traveled 200,000 miles, going around the world, preaching in many lands and in different languages. He continued his evangelistic tours until he was 90 years of age. David Livingstone. David Livingstone, born in Scotland in 1813, was a medical missionary with the London Missionary Society. For the love of the Lord and the desire to spread the gospel, he mapped the continent of Africa in preparation for many missionaries to come. Livingstone is considered to be one of the greatest missionary heroes. Charles Spurgeon. Charles Spurgeon, England's best-known preacher, was born on June 19, 1834. Thousands of people gathered every Sunday for over 40 years to hear his lively sermons. In addition to his regular pastoral duties, he founded Sunday schools, churches, orphanage, and the pastor's college. Thomas Paul Parrott. Thomas Paul Parrott has been described as the apostle of Pentecostal movement in Europe. His meetings attracted large groups of people from different denominations, and visitors began to flock to hear him from overseas. Alexander Boddy. Alexander Boddy, born in 1854, was the main pioneer of Pentecostalism in Britain during the early 20th century. In 1907 Keswick Convention, 20,000 people spoke in tongues through the pamphlet he distributed called Pentecost for England. Evan Roberts. Evan Roberts, born in the 19th century, was the most important figure in the Welsh revival. He mastered the scriptures, and his manner of public speaking struck deep into those who heard it. He inspired the creation of house prayer groups to pray for the growth of the revival. Roberts' revival was widespread across Wales, England, North America, and other parts of the world. Smith Wigglesworth. Smith Wigglesworth was born in 1859. He had no proper education until late in his teenage when he decided to learn the Holy Scriptures, and the only book that he read in his lifetime was the Holy Bible. Wigglesworth, who was a stammerer, began to speak clearly in 19 tongues when he was filled by the Holy Spirit. He has risen many people from death. Smith later went on to develop a major international preaching and healing ministry of his own. George Jeffreys. George Jeffreys was arguably the most influential and the most gifted preacher that the British Pentecostal movement has ever witnessed. He was converted in the Welsh revival on November 20, 1904, with his brother Stephen under the evangelistic ministry of Glasman Jones. His evangelistic and divine healing campaigns soon filled the largest public halls in the country. There were thousands of converts, scores of healings, and dozens of churches planted during his lifetime. The Welsh Revival. Many people will be familiar with the Welsh Revival of 1904, which is often referred to as the Evan Roberts Revival. Only 17 people were present at the first meeting, and later the revival spread as he was invited to other places, and within 6 months it is estimated that over 100,000 were converted. Not only were individual lives changed by the power of the Holy Spirit, but entire communities were renewed. Drunkards, thieves, gamblers were transformed. Miners prayed together before commencing the shifts in the pits. Football and rugby teams were converted and fixtures abandoned. Pubs were empty and dance halls were deserted. Magistrates had very few cases before them. Police forces were removed from Wales. The revival of 1904 was the most widespread of all awakenings, affecting all parts of the world. At the end of August 1907, Thomas Parrott, a British-born and educated Methodist minister from Norway, came to Sunderland to start a campaign of meetings in the church hall. His meetings were known for the speaking in tongues, tremendous prayer and praise with solid biblical preaching. Among those who came to Sunderland were Smith Wigglesworth, who spoke in tongues for the first time, Stephen and George Jeffreys, John and Howard Carter, and numerous other people who later became leaders of the Pentecostal movement that swept the world. According to the recent study of the percentage change of the UK church membership, almost all the major denominations witnessed a negative growth, whereas the Pentecostal churches grew by 21% in 2013 and is predicted to grow to 25% by 2020. According to the recent study of UK Christianity, only 2% of the population go to church on a Sunday, yet only 60% believes that Jesus even existed, with 22% describing him as a mythical or fictional character and another 18% unsure. In England, Church membership is forecast to decline to 2.53 million by 2025. Churches are turning to pubs and shopping centers. Every 10 years, the census spells out the situation in detail. Between 2001 and 2011, the number of Christians born in Britain fell by 5.3 million, that is about 10,000 a week. The British Social Attitudes Survey indicates that Anglicanism is declining faster than any other major denomination. With the current rate of decline, it will be said to disappear from Britain by 2033. Perhaps one of the most important lessons we need to learn from the 1904 revival is that a revival can never be arranged. We can and should be prepared for it. And when God sees the time is right, we must respond by ensuring that it reaches out into society and is not confined to any church buildings.
Now is the time.
Are we ready to respond?